Welcome to MKT563, Big Data and Marketing Analytics. In this lecture, I'll be talking about the background to the subject, what is big data, why are analytics important, and how do we then learn something about this area given the learning outcomes and assessments. Consider the following developments in data. More than 50 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube, 500 hours rather, of video footage is uploaded to YouTube every minute. Google reported 4 years ago now, that there are some 30 trillion web pages which had increased 30-fold from 2008, just in that 5-year period. There are some 350 billion text or MS messages exchanged worldwide every month. And our smartphones generate mobile network data regardless whether we send an SMS or not, such as location data, whether it's trying to find a signal, trying to log on, and so on. So there's all this location, GPS related information now. More than 90% of the world's data, according to Michael Howard, Vice President of a marketing consultancy firm, Greenplan, in the US, of the Electronic Marketing Communications Division, was created in the last 2 years alone. So there is an increasing amount of data which is recently created, and this creates tremendous challenges for how we make sense of it in the business and marketing world. So what is big data? Well, it's defined as a large secondary data sets. Often it's been collected for other reasons than what we had in mind. So obviously when people go into Facebook, they're not just giving us information according to what marketers would like to do. It's for different issues. Okay, so we've got invoice information, which is not necessarily marketing information, it's financial information. The difference though is the data is now being constantly generated and there is diverseness and richness in the data. So this is led to what we call the 3 V's of big data, or characteristics of big data. The first is the volume. The volume, as you saw previously, is growing at an exponential rate. And we're now needing petabytes, terabytes to deal with the data that we're seeing. Okay, so the volume is increasing as our engagement. Wait till we have the Internet of Things, then I would expect the volume of data will go up even more. There's velocity of the data, real-timeness of the data. So why I'm talking to you now, we could be doing a social media analysis of this post on YouTube, or we could be looking at the way that the university's website is being viewed around the world, or your website's being viewed around the world, or what people are talking about your company around the world, and that occurs in real time now. So it used to be that we would commission a report, go out, collect some information about consumers, competitors, come back and there'd be a bit of a lag. Now we have real-time data. And if we throw in things like GPS, traffic data, not only online traffic, but actual vehicle data, you can see where the velocity comes from. There's an increasing variety of data, so location variety, GPS data, text data of course, but you've now got things like audio data, so what people say on telephones at call centres being recorded, you've got video, you've got photographic data. So these are all an increasing variety of data which creates challenges of how you combine all this into a portrait of your consumer, of your market, of your competition and the marketplace around you. In marketing, we probably add a couple of things to these which are important. The information's got to have veracity in terms of a particular marketing issue, be it customer retention, getting new customers, a segment of market, where's our referrals coming from, positive, negative, word of mouth, and so on. Also, it's got to have value to the decision making. So this means that analytical or highly complex relationships aren't any use to us unless they're actionable. So they have to be actionable to a decision maker. And here's an example of where we've got a whole bunch of information and your recent Amazon purchases, tweet score and location history makes you 23% welcome here. What does that actually mean in terms of insights of consumer behaviour? Is 23.5% in this cartoon a good or bad figure? Okay, what's the benchmark? What does it lead to? What's the optimization of these numbers? How does it relate to what we're doing? So if you want to think about it, we really do need some sort of analytical approach, and that analytical approach leverages off what resources we have in the firm. So firms' resources vary in terms of their physical, human capital and organisational resources. In this subject, I'm going to introduce you some tools that are readily available for large and small to medium enterprises and government and not-for-profit companies. The data, of course, you can see the variety of the data that's coming in here. Implied in that, of course, is the volume, and you can see the resource characteristics of how creative we use that information, and importantly up here, the insights that we generate from that as well. And that then provides the capability either to adapt or to go ahead of the market curve to look at new emerging trends towards our marketing mix or value creation here, providing a long-term sustainable competitive advantage. So this is from one of the papers I've referenced here by Earls from the Journal of Business Research, and how they see big data fitting into decision making in the firm. Okay, so here's an example. Well, so far I've talked about abstract concepts. Are there some examples, Steve, of when this is used? Well, yes, there is. And Facebook and Twitter, for example, have a lot of information. These companies, in case you're wondering, how does Facebook, how does Twitter make money? Well, they're really market research companies, and they're providing information about us when we go on there to monitor what we call centre analysis. So Foxtel, for example, in Australia, recently used software to identify fans who posted about the series The Walking Dead. Analysis found, of those people who posted, 5% of the fans were responsible for all the referrals of the shows. This is showing that a relatively small number of people influence the popularity of a show. Okay? The National Australia Bank has a team of 7 social media staff who cover everything from customer service to campaign production. They receive some 5,000 comments and resolve some 600 service requests through social media every month. Some people now say that if you want a customer service problem resolved quickly, you're better off going onto social media sites, and you're more likely that'll be picked up by this team and be resolved more quickly than if you went through traditional channels. And I suppose that's primarily because of the example from Foxtel, the analytics there, that relatively few people can influence a lot of people. Metadata, that's where we visit on web pages, how long we spend there, where we come from, tags on photographs like Facebook, likes, dislikes. All these things have values to marketers down big data. And using software called Tagman, and that's the company down there, so these are brand new business models and business being developed. Able to determine Version Atlantic, we're able to determine which visits to which websites ultimately led to purchases. So what kind of previous visiting history led to you ultimately making a decision. So that's a really important thing to know, because that's where you target your advertisements. It also might give you a bit more of a profile about these people. An approach also used by travel agent Thomas Cook, who saved some 25% of their affiliate marketing budget because they knew where to place their offers using such an approach. And I've given some references here. So this stuff creates sales, as you can see, and interest, but it can also save companies money. Now, the approach here in big data is somewhat different to how we often solve problems in business using what we might call a pseudo-scientific approach. In a scientific approach, we start with some idea of how the world works. We collect information, we develop a theory or understanding about that, and then we test that theory or understanding through repeated measures. In this approach, we start with the data first, with no preconceptions. We then look for an archetype or a pattern within that data. We see if that pattern can be represented across the data set. Then we would generate an empirical observation or generalization. 5% of fans of Walking Dead were responsible for all the referrals. Is that true for other shows that Foxtel have? And that's a theory that we generate, and then we conceptualize that back and examine through the data. So this approach is often called abductive reasoning rather than traditional inductive or deductive reasoning. The The other reason that, or approach we follow here, is that traditional statistical approaches, where we look for relationships which are less likely, highly unlikely to occur by chance, doesn't work here because the data is so large and in such many formats that we really do need to rely on some sort of pattern recognition and developing some sort of archetypal or generalization and see if that fits somewhere else. So it's a different way of thinking about things. That's why I put that up here. Okay, so what are some steps then? What are some pointers in big data and analytics? And this comes from an article written in Harvard Business Review a few years ago. Firstly, you need the right data. Focus on the usable data you already have, data you have access to. That's always a good start. Source data creatively. Often the data may be available internally and may be combined with some information for social media. And you've seen examples here that social media information is readily available to a number of firms, including where I work. And so this information can be combined with things like, do these people actually choose to enrol here? Who do they tell the university about? What's their consideration sets of where they might like to study, and so on. And you might see that might apply to your organisation as well. You need IT support. A lot of this information is not held in marketing departments. It's held centrally, and so you need access to it. You've got to get the data in usable format. You may not want all the data. You may want a sample of the data. So you really do need their support. And then if you're going to run quite intensive data mining software packages, again, you may need additional IT support. In this subject, we don't do data mining. We're really relying on using some fairly, publicly available tools that you can use to find patterns in data. You want to then build some model or understanding to predict and optimize an outcome. So while you might find interesting associations, if they don't lead to an outcome like increased enrollment or greater customer retention or saving your affiliate marketing budget, they're not useful to you. So you're really trying to make sure the data fits a use or purpose. And you want to develop relevant analytics that can be put to use. In other words, the 5% rule is an analytic that we talked about Facebook that's important. Which websites do people go to and how long do they stay on those websites would be something that Thomas Cook would need to know about an analytic that they would be interested in. Why? Because when they task their marketing budget to these websites, they want to know that those people stay that long because that's their profile, where they've come from. So they need the analytics there, or that if you don't reply to an email within 3 days, people don't accept their offer. So that's a really important analytic that then that can be actioned into meaningful managerial practice. And so hence the last step, embed the analytics into simple tools and frontline, simple rules of thumb if you like. One way of doing this is often what's called dashboards, and we'll look at an approach which can create dashboards called Tableau. Now, firms don't always get it right, and here's an example where they don't get it right. And 5 multinational companies working with Nielsen, you can see them there listed there, and Arbitron, who are also a large market research company, worldwide company, tried to create their own big data set using panel data, so people who pay to be part of a panel, with portable people meters, and these are things that record all the media that they come into contact, radio, television, and so on, and personal scanners. So then these same people would scan the groceries they bought, creating a single source data which links purchases with exposure to advertising. Sounds pretty cool. The problem was the part of the project was cancelled in 2008 because of difficulty of advertisers to fund it. Why? Well, firstly, the respondents were asked to wear people meters around their necks, so that was quite unnatural, right? And quite cumbersome. The project also, by using the technology, focused too much on television, print, and media. Now, you can see why this might have happened. In 2008, social media didn't have as much prevalence as it does now. And so, I guess this is an example of why we do big data, is that firms can't, or analytics, is that firms don't have all this information, and the information resides in a number of sources. And it's very hard to come up with one source of information that has everything in it. I wouldn't be here giving this lecture if I had one. So here's some of the references I've used in the first half of this talk for further information in case you're interested. And I put some of these up on the Interact site under weekly topics. So, okay, so what's then the overview of the subject and the nature of assessments? Why are we doing what we're doing? And here I'm going to talk about that now. Now, a lot of this information is in detail in the subject outline, and I urge you to download it, print it, and read it out. So about the subject, as you would have seen, the big data creates a lot of issues then in terms of making sense of it, analytics, and it's emerging, it's growing all the time, and we'll need some sort of tools to make sense of it. And we use some fairly publicly available tools. One is Excel, okay, for generating reports and making sense of data and trends. Another is data visualization software called Tableau, which is, I've got some free licenses for you to download, so I'll send out a license code to you and you can download the software, and we're going to look at a data set there. And finally, we don't always have the data in front of us, but nevertheless we need to make a decision, so we can construct a little simulation of a marketplace using, again, some freely available software called Insight Maker. More will follow. Okay, so the learning outcomes, hopefully at the end of this you'll have some skills in spreadsheet and data visualization, understand some different methods of analysis and how we present this information. Communication, as you can see, is a big part of this course. You can be the best analyst in the world, but if you can't explain to somebody with a non-statistic background or a non-IT background what's going on here, you're not really worth anything to anybody. So that's part of what we're doing here, in a nutshell. Sorry about the door slamming. Pass requirements, you need to at least 50% in order to pass this subject. Just be aware the university's changed its policy here regarding additional assessments. If you fall between 45 and 49 and you haven't had it in all your assessments, then you won't be granted an additional assessment. So just be aware of that. Make sure you had everything in, would be my advice there. Now the text, there isn't one text which covers everything. This covers really the important bits, and it's by Wayne Winston. Quite a nice book with a number of exercises that I put up there for you to look at. Yeah, so do we use all the book? No, but we use it for the first, I guess, assignment. And again, I think it's a useful reference for you to go on, because he also talks about integrating data sets from social media and so on, and how you make sense of it. And so there's a lot of useful practical exercises in it. So hence, that's why I've selected as a text. We'll use, there's some online guides for Tableau, which is the data visualization software we use in assignment 3, and Insight Maker, which is a straightforward simulation program which you basically draw arrows and boxes to. You don't have to do any programming, don't worry about it, and create a straightforward model which you'll then document. Okay, assessment items. There are 4, but really 3 main ones. The first one is really just to do with communication in the subject and encouraging peer-to-peer learning. And then we've got the 3, if you like, methodologies that we use in this area. Spreadsheet analysis with Excel, data visualization with Tableau, and complex systems with Insight Maker. So as you can see, this is a learning by doing rather than memorizing all the notes I've put up here and answering a few questions in an assignment or in an exam. So first assignment is worth 10%. It's an early engagement trigger. This is really proof of life, proof of engagement. And here we're asking you firstly to post in the first week and a bit, and answer a series of questions by reading up to 10 posts. So if there's only 5 of you, then read 5 posts, okay? Answer a question about yourself, and also collect some information about how others are going to collect information in assignment 2, which is an analysis of the property market in Sydney. A area in Sydney rather. So you can see the first one. This is what you post when you join the subject. My name is, I'm from, my company, place of work is, the type of information I'll be collecting for this spreadsheet is. Okay. Read through up to 10 and then fill out this following table. Okay, what locations, kind of source of information, and differences between men and women, different locations, where people are from, and how you think the colleagues' information might help you provide information. So hopefully we're all learning from each other in this assignment. So the rationale, the reason I'm asking you to do this Engaging with the subject, getting to know your fellow students, I always think that's useful. Using the forum, getting used to using the discussion forum, being familiar with it. Some of you, this might be your first Interact or Blackboard experience, so it gets you using that. Experience with submitting an assignment online, making sure that's all working, and to promote peer-to-peer learning for assignment 2, get you thinking about that at an early stage. There's the criteria. You can see it's fairly general. These are easy marks. So if you do this pretty well, I'm quite happy to give you 10 marks. It doesn't bother me. And you can see all the required information here, answered all the questions, completed all the table, and so on. Did you post or not? And that adds up to 10 marks. Okay. Second assignment is a spreadsheet analysis worth 30%. And here you're working for a real estate development firm which is considering various options around the Greater Sydney region. And they own residential property and then builds or renovates as needed and then sells as to owner occupiers or investors. So you're running a report for these investors or these managers, and you're basically using information about the local government area. So that's really the definition that the Australian Bureau of Statistics, a lot of state government information is based on. You do 2 reports using your Excel analysis here. So you're not writing a lot. I need 100 words for one report, 100 words for the other. Firstly, why it is a good place for why the local government area, and I will give you that local government area. You don't select it yourself. So everyone will have a different local government area they do. Maximum 100 words why it's a good place to property for resale and why it's a bad place for property resale. Some resources, there are some public available sources. There is quite a bit of information about this assignment on your subject outline, so please read that as well. And I've got some key sources, but these are by no means complete. Excel spreadsheets from Housing New South Wales, Department of Housing, Consumer Price Index data. Also you've got information about the Australian Bureau of Statistics, or ABS, about demographics in the area. Just some cautions or reminders here. Collection districts representing 700 people. Be sure you're accessing the right level of aggregation in your analysis. Obviously, you can't use all the data in raw form. There are many redundant or additional columns, and there are some that you'll find have missing values. Very, very rarely, when we get other data sets, do we find everything in one data set. So there's often a bit of cleaning and editing that will go on. And so you'll need to clean up the data before you give your analysis, and you present all the data in there as well as your analysis, by the way. Additional information may relate to specific properties. So if you say, oh well, there's this local government area is on the harbour, well that's obvious because it's already in the price. Okay, so you've got to look at some additional information or things that may not necessarily be reflected in the price or not in terms of this analysis. Okay, how is it marked? Oh, sorry, learning outcome. Intermediate skills to identify trends and relationships between factors and sources of industry. As you can see from a number of multiple sources, sense the variety issue and the volume issue of big data. But it's got to have veracity and value. So you can see you get marks the organisation spreadsheet, the formulas you've used. You get marked on the positive report evidence and additional evidence, and then you also then get marked on the same for the negative report as well here. So the marks are split equally amongst those as well. Assignment 3 is on data visualization. So here they were taking a different view. Here we're now trying to construct a visual picture of trends and relationships through dashboards and other approaches regarding some trends in advertising. And you can see here we use Tableau to create an interactive dashboard, and we'll obviously learn how to do that during the course. And then we're going to construct a storyboard explaining some aspect of data you find interesting or that could be misleading. So here, the data, we're looking for a trend, if you like, in the data, which then might tell us something about promotion and advertising and how we might do things in the future. Data sources are available here. There are some additional information about this assessment which is contained in your subject outline. Please look at that. Rationale. Okay, how can you analyse information? How can you draw conclusions from different data sources? And how can you use intermediate skills in visualisation software to identify trends that might be important. The marking criteria, you can see you get marks for the dashboard comparisons. If you can do, the more meaningful ones you can do, the higher the mark. Is it easy to use? The more easy it is to use, the better. Does it look format professional? Storyboard, is it interesting? So this is the explanation. So you can see insights are a really important part of this assessment. It's equal to what you actually have in the software, and you can see that you're marked according to that. Now assignment 4, which is also worth 30%, is complex systems, due last week, and here creates a simple model of interaction amongst industry and social factors. And we're going to create a different model amongst different players, or players, by players we mean different, I guess, actors or groups of society in the town of Burke. And you're going to create a model which demonstrates by simulation how youth alienation, police and community development, other variables interact with each other. So should we spend more on police? Should we spend more on community development? How do they interact between people being arrested and going to jail and then coming out and perhaps re-offending? Now this is an example where we don't always have data, or we're not always sure. We can't run an experiment. We could, but it would be slightly unethical in this case, about some of these things. So we might construct a simulation model, see if that makes sense, and then collect some data. Okay, so if you don't need to consider in this case information, or you're creating a conceptual model, and it's basically a series of boxes and arrows. This causes that and is affected by that, and the program then from that interface produces the necessary relationships. But you have to document what's going on and provide some reasonable conclusions. As I said, there's a lot about this assignment. I put in the subject outline here. I don't want to blind you with too much science at this stage, but just to know that this assignment will be submitted as onto a publicly available space called Insight Maker Group, which I've labelled there. Tips for getting started are listed on page 17 of your outline, and more information is on page 18 to 19 of your outline. This final assessment is the following learning outcome, creating interactive models using appropriate software and communicating the results to decision makers. And you can see that's reflected in how it's marked. So you've got the adjustments. So the model is not just created with one set, but if we increase policing versus community development, is that better? If we increase the level of alienation, does policing or community development work better? So these are often called sliders or variables. Okay, have we looked at the feedback loop? So what's the feedback loop between policing and alienation, or community development, alienation and crime? Documentation, you need to provide a very short documentation of what is going on, and you can see you're marked appropriately according to that. So hopefully this has enlightened you somewhat. There's a lot of information about the subject in the subject outline, which I urge you to print out and read. There's my contact details there. Feel free to contact me most days. Monday to Friday is not a problem. Weekends I try and spend a bit of time with my family, so unless it's urgent, please don't contact me then. Email is often the best way to resolve the problem quickly. If you are emailing me, let me know the subject, the nature of your inquiry. Often I teach a number of subjects, so if I'm having a problem with the assignment 1, I've got to know, I'll go back and say, well, which assignment, which subject. So that'll help me respond more promptly and help you. We have a series of online meetings and so on, which are also explained in the subject outline regarding student learning. So please read that as well. Consultation times, I'm generally in the office Monday to Thursdays 10 to 4:30 p.m. Other times may be available by appointment, so you can email me, ring me or meet me if you like. Contact by email or mobile is okay. Whoops, just lost everything there. Okay. But not on weekends, please. Okay. Good luck. I hope you enjoy this subject. It's the first time I've taught this subject, so bear with me. It's new for all of us. This area of marketing didn't really exist 5 years ago, but it's really part of our, if you like, a revision of this subject, of this master's course and the marketing program here, that we're up to date, providing things of value to you. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for your time.